Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the Halloween edition of Movie Goodness, where we are going to dive into a recent film series that has been sweeping, taking the world by storm. And it's mind-boggling to me. It's mind-boggling in a way that I didn't see it coming. Not because it's a horrible film franchise. I just didn't see this coming. And I'm talking about none other than the Terrifier franchise. The three films, Terrifier, which came out in 2016, Terrifier 2, which came out in 2022, and just a couple of weeks ago, Terrifier 3, which opened at number 1 at the box office. This what makes that phenomenal. This started off as a crowdfunded film. This was a small budget. The first Terrifier. I think it was made for like $35,000. They made that film, and from there it just took off, and we got this trilogy with a fourth film on the way. And I did not see this coming from this franchise. And it's Halloween. So I figured, hey, I'm going to do a Halloween show because this is my favorite time of the year. I love Halloween. And the reason I love Halloween, not because I celebrate it, I don't think I've dressed up since I was 7, but I just love what it signifies. Not the deeper meaning because I'm not a Satanist, but I'm talking as far as uh, it signifies the start of the holiday season. It signifies the start of the fall season, and it's just a good time of the year. I love this time of the year, and I love scary movies. It's and I especially love scary movie. Cheesy scary movies, like especially 80s. That direct to video scary movies that you might find at Blockbuster, that you never heard of. Like, what is this? Tox's Avenger. Well, that's not a scary movie, but you get my point. Like these hidden little gems of scary movies, and Terrifier fits right into that. Terrifier is like an homage to all of those cheesy late 70s, 80s horror films that you used to find deep buried on a shelf at your local video store, and that you just took a chance on and popped it in, and was scared by it. Because low budget films like that, like this, are done with love. It's done with care because you don't have a lot of money, and so every frame of that film is treated with care. you know Whether it's good or not, you got to respect the hustle, and that's what I love about films like that. And to be fair, I never watched Terrifier, not because is I'm above it or anything. I just never watched it, and I was always aware of it, but I never got around to watching it. What made me want to watch these three films was Terrifier 3. Terrifier 3 came out, 2 weeks ago at the time of this recording, and it opened at number 1, dethroning Joker 2. Now, that's not a tall task to do because nobody went to see Joker 2. And nobody liked it except me. I actually liked Joker 2. But I think me and maybe Joaquin Phoenix are the only two people that liked that movie, but that's neither here nor there. But that was a big deal because that was Joker 2's second weekend at the box office, and Terrifier 3 came and wiped the floor with him. And all of a sudden my antennas shot up. Like, man, there's an audience for this film franchise. There are people who really love these movies. And I was curious. I wanted to see it. But I couldn't go see it because I didn't see the first two. And I'm a purist. I can't just jump into something. I got to start at the beginning and go all the way through. It's one of my ticks. So I went ahead, watched the first two. Well, well, I'll get to it when we break them down. In case you haven't figured it out by now, we're going to review three films in this franchise. I was going to say all three, but well, it is all three currently, but there's a fourth film coming. But we're going to review all three films in this franchise when we get to that moment. But yeah, I watched the first two and I was, you know, like, wait, this is interesting. So when we get to the third one, I, I was left like, yeah, they got to keep this going. They got to keep this going. This is so good. It felt throwbackish. It really did. It felt, and I watched all three of these films in one day. I watched them all in one day because I wanted to see the next one. I watched the first one. My initial plan was to watch one a day. Every evening, I said, okay, I'm gonna watch one today. I'll watch part two tomorrow evening, and part three, I'll go see that later on. Nope, I ended up watching part one. Was so it hooked me so much. I immediately went and found part two, watched that, and then went to see part three. I was hooked. It got me. I'm a fan, and like I said, I'll break it all down when we get to the review. But let's talk about Terrifier. Let's break down Terrifier and how it came to be. This is, in case you don't know, a horror franchise. It's Halloween, people. And it was created by Damien Leon, and this is a slasher splasher film. And I mean splasher. The franchise focused mainly on Sienna Shaw, a young woman destined to defeat Art the Clown, a demonic serial killer that inhabits the fictional Miles County, New York. Additionally, the series follows Victoria Haynes, a disfigured survivor struggling with her mental health, and the little pale girl, a sinister entity who accompanies Art the Clown. This is a very disturbing franchise. These movies are so violent. This is straight up torture porn. This is the goriest of gory. I mean, sickest stuff you can watch. This isn't cute horror. This isn't Disney horror. This is hardcore horror that you will find in the early 80s. That type of horror. Bodies dismembered and people being burnt alive and gutted, and you get to see every single gory detail in this stuff. I mean, the kills in this franchise are some of the sickest stuff I ever witnessed. That being said, I enjoyed it all. I enjoyed it. And normally I'm not into torture porn. I'm not into all of that super gore and bloody stuff. And, it has its place. It has its place. I'm not a prude in any way. I will enjoy a good film. I feel that if you're going to do that, it has to fit the story, if that makes any sense. We can't have blood and gore and, people doing jump rope with your guts and stuff like that in I don't know, a mainstream film. I can't. It's hard to describe what I'm trying to display to y'all, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, Brad Pitt can't do this stuff, so you got to do this in a low budget format. And when you have a low budget film like this, it's got to be gory because you don't have a choice. You gotta resort to practical and doing things the way that it's done in the Terrifier films. And so I get it, and it actually fits this film. We're dealing with a demonic clown. And for a second here, we're going to get back to Terrifier, but for a second here, who out there is terrified of clowns? I never was that guy to be like, oh man, I can't stand clowns, man. Clowns freak me out. But recently, clowns really do disturb me. They are disturbed. I'm not scared of them, but they really do disturb me in a crazy way. And so, yeah, so to start watching this and Art the Clown, which is the most demonic clown you can think of. This is a clown, and ironically, that it dethroned Joker, another clown, but it's at the box office a couple of weeks ago. But this is the most disturbing clown of all time. Now, my little not fear. I don't know any other word to describe it, but my discomfort with clowns started with Poltergeist back in the day. When I first saw Poltergeist in that clown doll that was in the little boy's room and was choking him and all that. Yeah, I didn't. That's the first one that I was like, I can't stand clowns. But I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared of it. But it was like, man, that's a freaky situation to be in. Actually, talking about it now, I just the hair on my arm stood up. So I guess I am scared. I don't know why I'm beating around the bush with it. I guess I am scared of clowns. But I'm trying to convince myself that I'm not. But I don't like clowns. And Art the Clown, that did it for me. This is one of the most disturbing film villains of all time. I mean, you can stack them up with Freddy. You can stack them up with Jason, Michael Myers, Pinhead, whatever other slasher monster you can think of. But he's up there with him. And if you put him at the top, I wouldn't argue with you. Art the Clown is super, super disturbing and so vicious. What makes him vicious is the fact he doesn't just kill you. He doesn't just kill you. He makes you suffer. It is brutal. He tortures you. Man, just kill me, dog. The way he kills you is he never kills two people the same. Everybody gets it differently. It depends on what's around at the time. it is so brutal, bruh. But yeah, Art the Clown is probably one of the greatest uh horror movie villains to come around in the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years. I will put him up there with some of the greats, honestly. But let's not dilly dally along. We got three movies to go over. So let's start with the one that started it all. In 2016, the independent slasher film written and directed by Damien Leon, Terrifier. And this film stars Jenna Cornell, Samantha Safdie, and David Howard Thornton, who portrays Art the Clown. And the plot centers around partygoer Tara and her sister Victoria, who become targets of a serial killer known only as Art the Clown on Halloween night. And this film, like I said before, it was made for $35,000. $35,000. It ended up grossing $420,000, which isn't a lot, on in the grand scheme of things. But it's a lot when you only made it for $35,000. It turned a profit, and this is about as independent can get. This was so cheaply made, and I'm saying that with all respect because it was a fine film. This was a good movie. I mean, it's not Friday the 13th. It's not A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's not Halloween. It's its own thing, yet it does a marvelous job of paying homage to some of the body horror films, the like I said, 80s slasher films and just a true horror throwback that we've been missing. We haven't gotten a film like this in so long, and it deserves all the love that it gets. This film is so brutal in the style that it is shot. You can only do so much with it. It's see, I can't view this film as a, for instance, Smile 2, right? Smile 2, big budget horror film, vastly different. The opening scene in Smile 2 probably cost more than this film. it's, it's just that opening scene, which was phenomenal in Smile 2. But this film found a way to make everything just completely frightening. Every time Art the Clown was on screen, it was disturbing. Because here's a little known fact: if you've never seen the Terrifier films, any of them, Art the Clown doesn't talk. He doesn't talk, but he emotes. You know, Mike Myers didn't doesn't talk, so that's not new in horror films. But Michael Myers wears a mask, so you don't see his expressions. You don't see him laughing or getting mad or changing his facial expressions when he's upset or anything like that. And so you really can't connect with Michael Myers, even though he's a killing machine and basically a soulless killing machine. That's basically how you could describe him. Art the Clown doesn't talk, but he emotes. He's like a mime. Actually, he is a mime, and he's so creepy. He is the creepiest thing you ever want to see. He doesn't even have to kill you. Just the mere sight of him is so creepy. You probably have a heart attack. He just looks disturbing. The way he smiles, the way he laughs, even though when he laughs, nothing comes out. He just opens his mouth, like, it's just so disturbing. And then when he gets upset, with the makeup and the way David Howard Thornton, contorts his face or whatever, it just looks just evil as I don't know what. I mean, it's everything just worked about this character. And it makes sense that they're continuing on in this franchise because Art the Clown is phenomenal. It did, the one thing about the first film that you can critique is the acting, and you can kind of give it a pass a little bit because, like I said, this is a low budget film. You didn't have George Clooney and Matt Damon in the film, so it is not going to have A-list quality acting, but the acting was good when it was frightful scenes with the scares, with the screams, with all that. All that worked. But when characters had to talk, when there was dialogue heavy scenes, it was like watching paint dry, man. It was bad for these actors and actresses. And it was all I could do was laugh because I'm thinking of films that I used to watch when I was growing up. This was the norm, really. Seeing a lot of movies like this, it was just a breath of fresh air to see it now in 2024. It's just strange, but at the same time, like I said, I got to give it a little pass for that. They were trying and they did a good job for what they were doing. The one to add on to that, because it's all linked together. It's not two different gripes, but the characters are underdeveloped, and I'm talking about the protagonist here. Now, Art the Clown, he was pretty well developed, even though we don't have a backstory. Actually, we never get a backstory. Maybe we'll get it in part 4, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But this really isn't that type of movie, whereas you're getting flushed out characters. It was just a killing spree. But your protagonist, you didn't know anything about him, and when you don't know anything about the quote unquote heroes of the film or the protagonists of the film, uh, you really can't get behind them. So when they meet their demise, you really don't feel nothing, and that's the gripe I have. Now, one character, yeah, one of the characters, and that's the one that survived. She kind of has an arc, but not to the degree whereas you can get behind her. You get what I'm saying? It's not 100% flushed out. But overall, if you go into this film just looking for uh horror, blood fest, splatter fest, this is the movie for you. I mean, there's no arguments here. It has the scares, it has the disturbed nature of it all, and it truly is terrifying. Terrifier from 2016 gets a letter grade of a C plus. This was a really good. It was good. This was really good. This is one of those horror films that you can turn into a tradition that you watch every Halloween. If you're into this. If you're not in, if well, I should have started it all off. If you're not into the blood and goring stuff, don't watch any of these movies. Don't watch it. But if you're into all that and none of that bothers you, go ahead and watch it. Another note, and this also applies to all three films. Don't eat nothing. Don't eat nothing while watching these movies because it's going to come right back up. So yeah, this is this is that type of film. But yeah, Terrifier gets a C plus. I really did enjoy it, but not as much as Terrifier 2 from 2022. And this was a supernatural slasher film, once again written and directed by Damien Leon. This is the sequel to Terrifier, and it is the second film centered solely around Art the Clown, and of course, the second installment in the Terrifier franchise. It includes the return of David Howard Thornton and Samantha Safdie, who portrayed Art the Clown and Victoria Haynes, respectively, in the first film. This film stars Lauren Lavera, and this go around, the plot follows Art the Clown's resurrection and pursuit of teenager Sienna Shaw, played by Lavera, who discovers that she is destined to defeat him and wield a magical sword, the only weapon that can stop him and her younger brother Jonathan on Halloween night, 1 year after the events of the first film. This film dives right into the supernatural. We see that Art the Clown is resurrected, and it's just, well, we saw that at the end of the first film. Spoilers, but it is, we going supernatural. We going full supernatural here, and I'm not mad at it. You got to at this point, and I enjoyed this movie so much more than the first film. And even though I enjoyed the first film, now this film got a little hike in budget, still not up to quote unquote Hollywood budgets. This film was only made for $250,000, which is a huge jump from the $35,000 for the first film. But it's the quality, the way this film was shot. You would think this film was made for millions, maybe $5 million. It has that quality, and I think Damien Leon did a awesome job with this film. Much better film. He had a little more to play with here with the camera movements and locations and set designs and costumes, and we still didn't mess with any CG. This was still all practical with the blood and the brutal kills that we get in this film. But what impressed me about Terrifier 2 the most was the was the upgrade in the acting. Y'all heard what I said about the first film, and I gave it a pass because it was the first film. It was a low budget. Yeah, I get it. Probably got his friends. Probably never acted in a movie in their life, and so and they got in front of the camera for their boy. And it made the movie. That's fine. But this go around, the acting was better. Now it wasn't great. It wasn't great, but it was better. And the story was flushed out better. The characters were developed better. They took their time with it, which is one of the gripes I do have about this film. It was too long. This movie was way too long, and the third film is like that too. Before I get to it, but while it's on my mind, yeah, it's a little too long. I would say shave off 15 minutes of this movie, and it would have been 10 times better than what it already is. But I still enjoyed it. It wasn't like too long to the degree where I was bored at points or nothing like that. It was just some of the plots, they touched on it too much. Like, this was explained like two scenes ago. We didn't have to get it again. It was kind of repeated by another character or something like that. And it was like, okay, wait, I already got it. I got it. Let's get to this. Let's get this ball rolling. But everything in here was heightened to 11 from the first film. The kills were turned to 11. The story was turned to the 11th. Everything went up. Everything went up a notch. They didn't cheapen it though. It wasn't like they did it because they had a little more money and we can do more with it. No, they stayed true to the core of what they started off with part one, and I respect it highly. The supernatural element that they threw in here, it's kind of confusing, but I'm running with it. I'm running with it because that part of it is not explained. It is flushed out a little bit more in part three, but we still didn't get a full explanation. I guess we'll get it in part four, when they wrap it all up. But overall, this was great. I love the performance of Lauren Laverda, yeah, Laverda. I think I'm saying her name right. She playing a teenager here, but I think she's like 30, but she looks young. She looks young. But she did a good job here in this film. Art the Clown. Once again, the dude is disturbing. The little pale girl is even more disturbing than him. And she's only in a few scenes, the little girl that accompanies him. Very, very weird. And once again, came out of nowhere, no explanation, but didn't care. Didn't care. Yeah, this was some brutal stuff in here. Some of the kills in here will make you be like, my God. Uh they need a priest on the set of this film. Because somebody is not in touch with their spiritual side. If you coming up with stuff like this, you are deeply disturbed. But I enjoyed every minute of it. Terrifier 2, which came out in 2022, gets a letter grade of a B minus. Yeah, this was a huge upgrade to a film that I like, and it's rare that you get sequels that surpass the original. That's a hard task, and they managed to pull this off. Damien Leon, and I think I'm saying his last name right, but Leon, he's doing a great job with this franchise, and you can clearly see he thought this through, and he really had a story that he wanted to tell throughout these three films, and fourth on the way, and everything is connecting. Some of the questions that you had in part one they were kind of answered in part two. You know, maybe not fully, but they were addressed. In the way it links up, you can tell that he had a plan, and it links up even more in part three, which came out in 2024. Yes, Terrifier 3. It's still in theaters, I believe, and it is a Christmas supernatural slasher film written and directed once again by Damien Leon, and it stars once again Lauren Lavera and David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown. This go around, on the days leading up to Christmas, the story follows Sienna Shaw as she attempts to rebuild her life. At the same time, Art the Clown is pursuing her along with a new accomplice, the possessed Victoria Haynes from the first film. This is the sequel to Terrifier 2 and is the third installment in the Terrifier franchise. This was bananas. Now, this film got another pay hike, well, a budget hike, $2 million budget. And it made 20 something million in its opening weekend to go to number one. I think as of right now, this recording, it has grossed $43 million at the box office. That is bananas for this franchise. I mean, starting from absolutely nothing. This is a testament, and I'm gonna take this moment to say this. This is a testament to not giving up on your dream, not giving up on something that you're passionate about. Damon Leon was passionate about making this. He was gonna make this no matter what, and he did it with nothing, absolutely nothing. And look at him now. You know, I mean, kudos to him. Whether you like these films or not, whether you think these films are any good or not, that's irrelevant. The point is, he followed his dream. And look at it, man. He went from making a $35,000 film on a shoestring budget with, you know, probably one camera and a couple of friends. And we fast forward to now with a, to date, $43 million gross in the box office, with more to come, because it's still, I mean, we haven't got to Halloween. So I'd imagine a lot of people in Halloween probably going to go see this film and so on and so forth. It's going to make more money, and it deserves it. This was a really good film. It's not my favorite in the franchise. Part two, in my humble opinion, is better. This film was good for what it was. You know, continuing the story with Sienna Shaw. I thought that was interesting. Still some confusing things. Every time they answer questions, like I was saying about it being linked up with everything else, they linked up good with some plot points from the first and the second film, but then it raises more questions in this film, and you're like, where are we going with this? I'm so glad we're getting a part two. Oh, not a part two, a part four. Maybe they will get answered, because part four is supposed to be the end of everything. It's supposed to be the conclusion to this franchise, because they say that all the time until that film comes out and it makes $500 million in part five coming soon. But this is a confusing film at points, and that's why this one is not my favorite of the franchise. I was kind of like, okay, where are we going with this plot point? Because they open up the door to certain things that didn't make sense, you know, logically. Now, granted, this is a movie. You suspend disbelief, especially a resurrected demon clown. You know, yeah, I get all that. But it's not necessary to open up new plot points when you still have open-ended plot points from the first two films that you need to address. Now, if they would have opened them up in the first two films and not addressed and just left them alone, I wouldn't care. But you still have them running in the third film. you know, and we're not answering that. And you, it's like he was stuck on it. He was stuck on a certain story and didn't know how to wrap it up. That's the way it felt. Uh, I'm dancing around it because this is a fresher film. It's still in the theaters, so I don't really want to get into spoilers in case somebody haven't seen it. But I hope they get addressed in the fourth film. Now, what I liked about it, um, Lauren Rivera, who plays Sienna Shaw, huge upgrade from the first film. I mean, from the second film, and she did good in the second film. And, you know, some of her acting was a little choppy in the second film. In the third film, oh my God, she was almost Meryl Streep compared to what to what she was in the second film. This she she leveled up big time, man. I mean, big time. Acting wise, I really loved her performance in here. I was enjoying her journey, her journey of mental health and PTSD from what happened to her in the second film, and you know, survivor's guilt and all this here. It was very interesting to follow her character throughout this film, and that character was flushed out really well. Good job by her. Of course, David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown. He was great in here, but at the same time, I don't know. It it felt like it wasn't enough of him in this movie, if that makes any sense. You know, it wasn't a lot of him. It's like he only showed up to kill. Now, granted, he did that in all the, in the other two films, but it was like it was no rhyme or reason to the stuff he was doing in this movie. I think it was, I think they just had him doing stuff to do stuff. You know, it was a scene in the mall. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about with the kids and stuff. Oh, speaking of kids, there was a big controversy surrounding this film, as it is for all of them. I didn't mention in the first film the controversial chainsaw cutting a woman in half scene was so messed up. It was so messed up, and it was controversial, boy. And now they took that in part three and made it even more controversial. They didn't cut nobody in half, but well, actually, well, anyway, don't worry about it. But there are kids, and this is a spoiler warning for that. Kids get killed in this movie. I'm not talking teenagers. I'm talking kids. They're kids, and not one or two. I'll just put it that way. It is messed up, man, and you don't normally see films like that. Actually, I can't think of a film that has done that in recent memory, or any time of me watching films. Yeah, this was disturbing in that sense. Now, I'll give the filmmakers this much credit. You don't see the kids getting, you know, brutalized, but you can hear it in some sense. You can, you know, it's kind of in the background or something. It's messed up. It's messed up either way you slice it. But there is controversy behind that with the kids stuff. But it's really to pump up this character of how disturbing Art the Clown is. And so, with all that being said, I still enjoyed it. The ending was very unsatisfactory. I wasn't satisfied at all with this ending. I just did not like it. And another point I wanted to make, going back to part two, I'm all over the place with this franchise, but going back to part two, I didn't like part two's ending either. It was kind of draggy. That was part of my dragging argument about part two. The ending of that movie, drug, man. It just took forever to get to that ending. But part three, it didn't take forever. They actually paced it a little better here, as far as the ending. Like I said before, This movie could have been cut, 10, 15 minutes and probably would have been a little better. But it was just unsatisfying. It didn't satisfy me at all. All it did was set up part four, and that's all it did. And I was left kind of like, oh, it's, and I didn't feel like that for the previous two films. Even though I didn't too much care for the second film's ending, I did like the end result of it. It just the length it took. But with this one, I didn't like nothing on how it ended. Oh, come on, man. Really? Really? That's how y'all gonna stop it here? They could have stopped it 10 minutes earlier and I would have been so happy. So happy. And bro, because you really thought they were about to end it at a point, and that would have been the gangsterest ending in a horror film, but it kept going. And just to set up part four. And I was so unsatisfied. That's all I can say. But Terrifier 3, which came out this year, a couple of weeks ago, gets a letter grade of a C plus. Yeah, it was good, but it wasn't nearly as good as part two. Part two stands out to me. If I had to rank them, it will be 2, 1, and 3 if I had to rank them. And depending on what day you ask me, I probably shuffle 1 and 2, not 1 and 2, 1 and 3, uh, their spots. But part 2 will always be the favorite of mine until 4 comes out. We'll see what that does. But yes, this is a good franchise. It is. Like I said, I have my gripes about them. I have my gripes about every franchise. you know, there's no perfect franchise. But this one, this one is deeply disturbed. It's perfect for the spooky season for Halloween. This is a triple threat if you want to watch all three. You know what I'm saying, for Halloween night, or the whole day really, because that's what, about 6 hours. So you start watching it around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Pop in part 1, and by the time you're in the bed watching 3, if you can go to bed after watching these movies. But yeah, it is disturbing. It is some really disturbing stuff, and I really didn't realize it till I was putting the notes together for this show, and I was like, man, that movie really freaked me out. I really, I had to think about it. I haven't slept well since I watched since I watched these 3 movies. I wasn't up shaking like a leaf or nothing like that. It was like I just was thinking about these movies, not in a scary fashion, but on how crazy these movies are. And so, yeah, I guess it did leave an impact. It left an impact. I'd like to know, what did you think of Terrifier, Terrifier 2, and Terrifier 3? Did you enjoy these films? Do you like these type of horror films, or do you stay away from all of that? I understand if you do. As far as stay away from them, I get it. But this is so good, man. It's just nostalgic for me. It feels like a throwback horror franchise that I grew up on. So I'm deeply in love with it. Deeply in love with it. But that's just me. I would like to know your thoughts. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for this show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, subscribe and like this video on the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to movie goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this Halloween edition of Movie Goodness as we looked over the Terrifier film franchise. Happy Halloween, everybody. I hope that you enjoy. your Halloween. If you're going out trick or treating with the kiddies, y'all be safe. Like my mom used to say, check your candy. They put razor blades in. You remember you used to fall for that. I honestly used to fall for that. Now I remember hearing a story of this man putting razor blades in candy. That was like centuries ago, but for some strange reason, parents told their kids that, at least when I was growing up. Now I'm pretty sure they had some disturbed people that used to do some disturbing stuff to the candy, but it was like, man, I gotta check the candy, and I could not touch one piece of candy until my mom went through the whole bag and thoroughly inspected every piece of candy, make sure that it was wrapped right. If it was if it looked like it was tampered with, it went in the trash. Boy, I was hot. I used to be, I used to be so mad because that candy, she would keep it in her closet until she checked it. I used to go in there and sneak and take a piece here, take a piece there. But it was, yeah, those were tough times trick or treating. But I got so disgusted with it, I just stopped. We just stopped trick or treating. It didn't make sense. But for all of you who still do, be safe out there. Enjoy. I hope y'all get the costumes that y'all are looking for. Have fun. Don't have too much fun, but have some fun. Want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.